Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro of the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
So on this edition of Into the Fray, this episode 203 has recurring guests. And if this is your first time listening to Into the Fray, you will not have known that this is their 7th official visit to Into the Fray. Now, Mark has called in a number of times with inclusions for call-in shows and such, but this is in fact their 7th official visit. And I am talking about Mark Muncy and Kari Schultz. And just a quick recap here before I bring them on. Erie, Florida was their first book, and edition 1, 2, and 3 for Into the Fray was episode 81, 94, and 104. And then for Freaky Florida, you are looking at episode 141, 148, and 163 for edition 1, 2, and 3 for that second book. So now, with episode 203, and goodness, hasn't it been a while, we are now on book 3, Creepy Florida, and this is, of course, edition 1. And Mark, I messaged you and I said, oh my goodness, I'm only like 5 pages in and I've already highlighted 8,000 things. Oh my gosh, you guys really packed a whole bunch into this. And if anyone hasn't read your books yet, might I just say that this is something that is the same vein in all of the books, and Creepy Florida is no different, that you guys chronicle the stories from north to south so that it's basically like a odd roadmap, a freaky little roadmap of you say the curious, the cryptid, and the haunted. And you do remind people, and this is very important, to be respectful of private property and, of course, check visiting hours for the public places. And that is something that you guys have always it's a good thing to preach and practice, and you guys always have done that for, how many miles is it now, you guys, that you've traveled in Florida alone for all of these books?
Florida alone, we lost count, I think, around the 15,000 mile mark.
Wow.
We were hitting close to 17, and we started expanding out of the state now for future projects.
Yeah, we're like on card number 2 for this.
Yeah, exactly. So,
when are you guys going to get sponsored by like Chevy or Ford or something? Somebody.
You don't want to get in touch with me, you just let me know. The original Erie Mobile died tragically back in February through one of Florida's scariest things called spring break driving season. And and then we got the new one, and it's already tacked on a bunch of miles already. So but that's what we do. We don't want to just write about something that we've read about or seen in the historical archive photos. We go and actually make sure the place is still standing, which we have an update on one of our old locations that we should talk about before we get done. But we also look for we go to the historical societies, we go to and libraries and archives, and it's a lot of driving in addition to a lot of research, in addition to a lot of writing.
Well, yeah, and you guys aren't just going to the locations and reading something out of a magazine or a book that you heard. You actually also do try to get in contact with people that have either firsthand knowledge or if they know someone that knows someone that has some knowledge about a place.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, we do. And we do a lot of on-the-spot interviews. We team up with paranormal investigators, Bigfoot hunters, ufologists, and you name it. We've probably teamed up with them at some point or another. For this book, we teamed up with a lot of paranormal investigators because our first book, Creepy, was Eerie was all over the board. It was we went Bigfoot, UFOs, everything. Freaky, we were able to go to a couple places that we had debunked, but were just really cool historically and had some really neat, history behind them, as well as our usual gang of misfits. And then we got to this one, and they pitched it to us. This is the first time the publisher's like, "Look, you've got 2 bestsellers. Let's let us steer you for this one." And we were like, "Okay." And they were like, "We really need a new ghost book. We want nothing but ghosts." And we were like, "That's kind of us, but we have to do our spin on it, because there's only so many things you can say, and you hear haunted laughter, and you see a shadowy figure." Yeah, that's
cold chill.
Yes.
Yeah,
cold chill. Because you guys did, in fact, and as you know, I chose one that we do jump into wild men and skunk apes and things in this book, even though your publisher said, "Hey, we kind of want to stick to ghosts and hauntings in this book." You're like, "Okay, well, we got our own little spin we're going to do here." And you did.
We went for the classics. You have, if you're doing a book called Creepy Florida, you have to hit the most haunted locations in Florida. Now, we'd already done a couple of them in the previous books, so we didn't want to retread old ground. That's one thing we never want to do, unless we had something new to bring to the table.
Right.
But then we also started realizing there are a lot of spectral things that aren't necessarily what you would consider a classic ghost. And that's when we started getting into some unusual things. And so we were able to bring our own spin to it that I think our fans are going to love. So,
yeah, I didn't know that it had been steered to a place of mostly a haunting type of a flavor. But, once I read your intro for the book, I was like, oh, well, that's different. But I got to say, it's grouped exactly like the other books. It's still got your flair for the writing along with Kari's illustrations. So it's not like people are going to be like, "Oh, what a bummer. They really departed from their old ways." It's still a wonderful book, and it is absolutely packed full of stories. I mean, even just for this edition 1, I was like, okay, I really got to rein myself back, because every single next start of a story, I'm going, I love this one. No, I love that. Oh no, this one's so good. So
yeah. And then the History Press really kicked in the money this time. They got a full color insert.
Yeah, we're like, woohoo!
So really? 16 pages of color pictures right in the middle of those things.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's so
it's
you're flipping along, and then suddenly, whoa, color! Yeah, so we're thrilled. I mean, they're really going all out for this. They think this is, we're proud of them. We love them, and they love us. So it works out great.
As well they should. I mean, it's you guys. I mean, how else could they feel about you? Well, again, thank you guys again for joining me. And hey, everybody, this is just edition 1. And even though I do always get to quote unquote 3 editions with Mark and Kari, just know that, we don't cover all of it in their books. There's so much in every single one of their books. Like we said, the first book, Eerie Florida and Freaky Florida, are out now. Creepy Florida is in pre-order now. So if you go ahead and do your pre-order through Amazon, the second it comes out, of course, if you get the Kindle edition, that's an instant right to your device, your iPad or iPhone or Android. Or, of course, if you pre-order and get the classic paperback, that will get sent to you straight away. So, and you said that this book does come out the end of next month?
Yeah, September 30th is official launch date. We're teaming up. Our usual local bookstore is still being remodeled that we normally launch at Books at Park Place. They should be up by then, and if they are, we will link it on our erieflorida.com website for pre-orders if you want to get a little something signed by me and illustrated in a little bit by Kari, like we usually do. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you can go to erieflorida.com and see our appearance schedule, because we are going to be hitting a lot of places starting in even towards the middle of September. We start kind of the pre-show tour, and then we it's off to the races after October. So
I always feel so lucky when I get sent the early final PDF, and then I get all the images. I'm like, I am really a lucky girl. I really am. So I was not disappointed. I wasn't expecting to be, and this one certainly delivers. So, okay, guys, well, let's jump right in here. I know you have the list that I have chosen and reined back quite a bit, as I mentioned, but let's jump right into St. Michael's Cemetery.
Okay, now St. Michael's is up in this wonderful place called Pensacola. We're working our way south here. Our books tend to go from the Panhandle across and then down. We kind of zigzag back and forth across the state. If you follow the major interstates, you can pretty much follow our path in our book. But St. Michael's is right in Pensacola, and it is one of the largest cemeteries in the state and most famous. I mean, there's some crazy sightings there that go way back. One of my favorites, there was a madam there named Molly McCoy, and she had a boarding house there, near there, and she was known to be, a lady of owning a house of ill repute. She took pride in her girls, and she handpicked them, and she gave them very strict rules. They're not allowed to drink, they're not allowed to smoke in public. She gave them classes in manners and elocution. And they were only allowed to walk outside in groups. They must never be alone. And in general, the city kind of that's happened a lot in Florida, and I guess a lot of places. The city just kind of turned a blind eye to it. They kind of felt it was like a necessary evil. Her girls keep the sailors from running amok in town as a big port town and all that. So she and her girls were often seen walking around the area near St. Michael's. And so, of course, spirits are often seen of them, usually in pairs in Victorian garb. But Miss Molly is seen quite often, and she's walking with some dark figure that she's always got hand in hand, and he's kind of the classic Abraham Lincoln looking thing with a stovetop pipe hat, and just walking around. There was an EVP that one of the groups up there got. Who are you walking with? And she's like, I walk with death. And that was the EVP. I love that one. And then the weird one, because we've got to go weird. I mean, that's classic. We love our classic stuff. But in World War II, these sailors were coming off of a boat that was being serviced in the harbor, and they were a little drunk, admittedly, and they went into St. Michael's, and they were standing around, and according to the eyewitness reports, a giant green skeleton, glowing. I mean, this sounds like right out of a Scooby-Doo episode.
Yes.
Comes out at them and grabs one of the sailors. And where it touched his skin, it blistered his arm. And they ran, and they all had apparently gotten yellow fever, even though they had all been inoculated against it before even getting on the boats in the first place.
That's a cool story. Like you said, it's just you got to throw that weird in there, and it doesn't get much stranger than that, a glowing green skeleton.
Exactly, and it's just... And the whole cemetery's got tons of stories. Now, we're not big fans of ghost stories and cemeteries, but they do go hand in hand, because we're always like, people already died. Why are they at the cemetery? But then you start researching the history, and again, you learn about all the bad things that happen in cemeteries because they're a quiet place. They're out of the way. So lots of bad things do happen in cemeteries. So, so are there, ghosts and stuff in cemeteries? Yeah, I think so. I think just about as much as anywhere else.
Hey, as mentioned, at least they knew where the sailors were. You said, hey, they weren't running amok. Hey, just go to Molly's. They're all at Molly's. You already know where they are. And then, hey, time to go back to work, fellas. Back on the ship.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I know that skeleton's been seen a few more times, especially in the 60s and early 70s, but has not had a recent sighting since 81. So...
You guys didn't want to camp out there and, see if it would come out, and just don't let it touch you. But
well, that's on it's on the agenda for January, February. There's a big convention up there called Pensacon.
Oh.
And we're in negotiations with them right now. So if we get up for that, there might be a night over at St. Michael's. Yeah. I don't know. Carrie needs a reference for a good giant green skeleton.
Absolutely. Pensacon. That just rolls off the tongue. That's a very I like that. That's a very smart name.
They focus on writers and artists, so that's
very
and
cool.
So.
All right. Well, next we are moving to the Panhandle of Florida, and we are talking about Magnolia Grille.
Now, this was a fun one. We kind of stumbled on it. We were looking for ghost stories as we were out there. We were up at Destin, which is not too far from this location. And we were just looking for interesting places to eat, as we do, because that's our second love is food. And we were in Fort Walton Beach, and my little note pile that I've had since the days of Hellview Cemetery, my original haunted house where we were collecting ghost stories, had notes of a thing called the French House. And I'm like, oh, that's got to be around here. And we couldn't find it. And that's because it is now the Magnolia Grille, which is the wonderful Tom and Peggy are so sweet, the owners.
Oh yeah, it was so wonderful going there.
They've turned this was a kit home. You could buy it out of a Sears catalog, and they would send it to you, and you built it. This is
that one that is pictured is from a kit home.
That is a kit home.
Holy
yes,
cow!
If you look at it, it's beautiful. It's a giant.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful manor house. The place is huge. But there are no mortared edges or anything. But you don't notice it because it all just fits together really well. I mean, apparently, the whole point of these things is you could build these things with next to no carpentry skills.
It's a gorgeous place. I'm looking at the picture again right now. I'm like going, there's no way. I would never have guessed that.
Yeah. And now Tom and Peggy, they've turned it into this beautiful restaurant. They serve all kinds of wonderful food. Fresh seafood and the classics and stuff like that. Now Tom, who also has a giant collection of World War II memorabilia in his attic that is open to the public that you can just walk in. You come. You don't even have to eat at the restaurant. You just go upstairs.
You just go up the stairs and bam, you have all this crazy stuff up there.
Yeah, and Nazi flags and but he's got stuff from the nearby Eglin Air Force Base, the original design models, and then there's flags captured from dozens of places, but then also service flags and stuff like that. It's uniforms, weapons. It's a crazy collection. Now the building itself was already known to be haunted when they bought the place. That had a ghostly someone who kind of hung out in the kitchen area and made noises with the pots and pans, and Tom and Peggy were very upset that they didn't do the dishes. Could have saved them a little bit of payroll. But the funny thing was, as we went there and we were talking about the ghost stories and all that, they showed us this wonderful painting that they had brought, and this is from their family up in Xenia, Ohio, and they had brought this painting down. And it was of two aunts, and they are just these two little girls. One's in a chair, and one's standing next to the chair, and it looks like a typical family portrait from probably the early 1800s or late 1800s, early 1900s. And he and guests who come to the restaurant have noticed that sometimes the girls change places. Now that was a crazy story to hear, and then to hear it from so many witnesses and even the employees, that was wow. So we had to get a picture of the picture in the book, and it's just definitely, when you go there, it's just an amazing little restaurant and just a cool piece right on Fort Walton Beach. So
that was the one that I took the screenshot of when I was going through the book and doing my highlights and my notes. That I was trying to throw that in there as a little teaser because that picture is above another of the stories that we're going to be moving to next. But let me just say, and it's okay to say this, I know it's of his aunts, but that is a damn creepy painting. I mean, holy smokes, even without them moving.
Yeah, he admitted that it always gave him the heebie-jeebies when he had it in their house up in Ohio.
Yeah,
and that was why when they brought it down, he wasn't sure what to do with it. And he's like, it kind of fits the decor of the French house. So he put it in and he put it on display, and he's like, almost immediately, weird stuff started happening, right around it. And so whether it brought it or if something's latched onto it, either way, it's a wonderful thing to visit. So.
What a cool place. I would love to go see that. The girls in the painting, it's not a photo, it's a painting. It's very old. Yeah. They don't even look like little girls. When you look at their face, it could easily be, in their 30s or even 40s, but then they're attached to these little tiny bodies, and you're like, what is going on there? It's just so different. They look very distinguished, and anyway, wait till you guys see the book and this friggin' painting. I bet you, most people would look at that and go, you can't burn it, because a lot of people say you burn something and boy, you're really going to release some nasty stuff. But then again, they go, well, I guess I could hang it or put it in the basement, in the box or something. But I'm sure that was talked about. But what a cool story. The Magnolia Grille. Yeah. All right. So this next one, I really enjoy this one. I don't know that I would ever want to experience something like this. I mean, driving can be a pain in the butt enough without a pack of something chasing you, or even sighting something like this. But we're moving now, of course, to the Brooks Bridge.
Yeah, this is maybe 3 miles from the Magnolia Grille. It's the bridge from Fort Walton Beach over to Destin. And it's actually to another island before Destin. I'm losing it. Okaloosa Island, yeah. Which is right past Destin. There's like 4 islands right in a row, and you get up to this bridge, and it's the Brooks Bridge. It's part of the interstate system, and US 98 crosses over the bridge, and it was built in the 60s to replace an old span, and the story goes that if you go there on certain nights, and the cool thing about this one is that this legend has like a timetable. The problem is there's like 5 different timetables that people have said. And so if you go there on, what my favorite is like the 3rd Thursday of every month. Right. It's like, what? And then there's another one, it's like, the first night of the full moon, or the first night after a full moon. First night of the new moon. There's all these different legends. But anyway, so all these people say, but every one of them says at midnight. I always love the at midnight, because is that, our midnight? Is that midnight Eastern Standard?
You're like PST or EST?
Yeah. It was the old classic from Gremlins too. If they eat something at 11:45 and it's stuck in their teeth, right, and they swallow it after midnight.
Leftovers.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff you could get into in semantics. But anyway, semantics. But anyway, the story is at this bridge, if you stand out there at the select time on a certain night, you will see a pack of wolves. Now, they are not regular wolves, because they are glowing slightly, shimmering, some say, and that they run across the beach, and then they turn, and then they run over the water, right under the center of this bridge. Now, this bridge goes over a half mile, so it's a good-sized bridge. Not as big as some down here in Florida, but it's a good-sized bridge. It's going over an inlet out into the north of the Gulf, and you see these wolves run through, and they just continue and run and just disappear. Now, we thought we were one of the only people to know this legend, because when I first heard it was years ago, and I thought we would go up there and we would go stand out there, and we would be the only people, looking around, and because we were there on a full moon night. And when we got there, there were couples and a few stragglers just wandering around the bridge at midnight. I'm like, there's no reason to be out there that late unless you're looking for a specific thing. And so we started asking the people, why are you here? And they're all like, we're looking for the wolves.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, have you seen them? And they're like, oh yeah, we saw them when I was a kid, and I come back every chance I can to see if I can see them again. And one guy, he was so dead set on seeing him again, because the lead one had run under the bridge right as he was walking across it, and it made eye contact with him, and it shook him to his core, and he's like, I need to see it again. He's like, I cannot describe the feeling, but until I have it happen again. And and he's trying to document it. He's brought a camera. Now, he hasn't had it happen again, but then there was another couple that had seen it just the month before. It's usually Wednesdays, and sometimes it's like the first Wednesday after a full moon, first Wednesday of a full moon. It's of course it's one of those. We went out there, we didn't see anything, but it was an amazing experience to talk to all those people. And, it's just not something you expect. And so, can all of these people have the same hallucination? That's when you start going, okay, there's something to this. Something to this.
What a bunch of weirdos. I mean, I'm so glad that the three of us are not obsessive like that.
Yeah, not at all. It's not like sitting out there at midnight.
Yeah.
And we're just, we were smart. We went in May, and it wasn't quite as hot as it does get out there. So, but it was on the rise. So I'm like, we'll head back there in February or something when it's nice and cool.
It's so wonderful. I mean, I don't care what age you were, who you were with. Once you get bitten by that bug, it just never stops. And, I, of course, said that last statement very tongue-in-cheek because all of us are very obsessive.
Oh,
and,
yes.
we've basically made it our life's work. I was just going to say, yes, if we could be out there every single day, ditch the regular jobs and not have schedules to worry about.
Oh, yeah.
Then that's all we would do. I mean, and we would be sponsored by Ford or Chevy or Dodge. I got to throw out my, go Dodge, Hemi. If any one of those people want to sponsor us.
We've got a Dodge Caravan as our new Erie Mobile too. So.
See, go Dodge. Go Mopar. Yes, Mopar family. People are rolling their eyes at me right now. It's okay. But it does become such a wonderful obsession. And, but it shows when people like us, we take our extra moments to actually speak about these things. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly. And that was, like I said, it was all ages. I mean, there was an elderly couple, there was a young couple, there, a lot of nice in the middles. There were a bunch of young kids, so it was cool. But the fact it was like so, I mean, it was. I make it sound like it was like packed. I mean, there was maybe a dozen people, but still.
Well, that's quite a number, though. Like you said, just on a random
Wednesday,
right, a random
no
night.
Meetup group or anything like that. And the thing is, what was funny is, as we were talking to people, they weren't even talking to each other. They were all spaced out because they didn't want anybody else to think that's why they were there.
Right. Because they don't want to be the weirdos, even though they're all the weirdos and you're all out there for the same reason. It's a wonderful thing. And can I just say, the guy that said, well, I saw them when I was a kid and I come back every chance I get. It's kind of one of the things where you're going, don't tell me that guy didn't see something, Oh, yeah. Why the hell would he be out on a bridge on a random Wednesday night and probably didn't even live close and he happened to be in the area? He's like, I'm going to that bridge again. I'm going to Brooks Bridge because, damn it, I want to see the wolves again.
Yep. And then of course, Carrie was listening to all their descriptions. And so that's why that was one of the ones that we knew we had to sketch.
And it is a wonderful
Originally,
sketch.
this book wasn't going to have any of Carrie's art. This was all going to be photos because that was what they wanted. And then we were like, but there were just some of the stories that were like, okay, no, some of these got to have illustrations. And they were like, and then after Carrie had also done the illustrations for Erie, Alabama from another author. Mm-hmm. So she cheated on me.
She sure did.
But we were like, you know what? Because she didn't want to do any illustrations for this one because that one almost killed her. And then, but the wolves, I think, were the tipping point that we were like, okay, we got to do some illustrations.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the first one I finished.
I'm looking at it now. Of course, I have everything right in front of me ready to go. And I'm so glad that you decided to do some sketches, Carrie, because I don't feel like it would be a freaky, creepy, eerie Florida book sans any of your sketches. So I'm glad that you did.
Well, thank you.
Okay, guys, I'm going to attempt to say this name properly, but feel free to giggle at me. But next we are moving to the wild man of Ocheesee Pond.
Ocheesee Pond, you got it.
Oh, hey now. All right.
I mean, we had to go there just because the name is the Ocheesee Pond.
Yeah.
Now, this is North Florida. This is right in the heart of the Panhandle, almost actually towards mid-Florida, but it is near our old stomping grounds of Mariana and the Dozier School, which is always fun. But this place is it's a lake. It's, we call it a pond down here in Florida, but it's pretty good size. And some areas are dried up and a little bit just more swampy than others. And it's really famous for being, really good fishing lake, lots of wild animals out there. And the town of Ocheesee is now kind of a ghost town. There was a town there at one point that was a big stop on the stagecoach line from Tallahassee. Basically, the reason Tallahassee became the capital was because they had a road from Pensacola to St. Augustine, which were the two most populated spots in the state. And Tallahassee was like right in the middle. So they're like, okay, that's where we'll make our capital. And that's why it's such North Florida. And, the capital isn't Orlando like everybody thinks. But this is even just like halfway between Tallahassee and Pensacola. And it was kind of a boom town. And the early industry in that area was turpentine. So it was lots of, you'll still see that when you especially find the old homesteads that were abandoned. You'll still see like where they've got the taps onto the trees for the old turpentine taps, which is really cool to stumble on those every once in a while. But what happened was, late 1800s, the settlers in the area noticed that the game was running out. There wasn't any animals nearby. And then it started escalating, as these things do. And a couple of the local farm animals were massacred. And so, of course, they're worried that it's, the Native Americans or outlaws. So they form a posse. Now, what they did not expect was they found our Florida classic, what they called the wild man at that point. We now lovingly referred to here in Florida as the skunk ape. And the rest of the world refers to as Sasquatch or Bigfoot. A giant 7 feet tall, according to most of the witnesses, covered in hair, barely human. Now, this is before the apes start reaching literature and stuff, so this was still a common term at the time, was wild man. As those who've watched On the Trail of Bigfoot with you would know.
Thank you. Very nice.
You're very welcome.
Nice tie-in. Thank you.
This was during the wild man phenomena. Now, this one made the papers big time because they caught him. They shot him in the leg and had him in a cage. And he was apparently smelled super foul. So everybody just kept their distance from him. Now, they didn't know what to do with him. They're like, what the heck is this? So they're like, well, let's send it off to the governor in Tallahassee. So they put him on the stagecoach. I wish there was a camera at this point
yeah.
to see this big thing chained to the back of a stagecoach in a cage. They took it to Tallahassee, and it made even more headlines. This one actually made national news, which in that day, that's pretty big. And, it's all over the papers. Wild man of Ocheesee Pond, and now what happens here is it kind of gets a little gray. We got all the newspaper clippings of it getting there. No records of it anywhere in the capital. No records anywhere after that. Now, according to some accounts, which are the closest we could find, is that the governor didn't know what the heck to do with it. He assumed it was an escaped mental asylum, or possibly even just someone who'd been growing up in the wilds. So he sent it to the state hospital, the state mental hospital. Now, there are records of a character being checked in there that was covered in hair and that they shaved him. And there's no further records after that. So what happened to the wild man? Who knows? And it's kind of just a normal Bigfoot story. And so why is it in creepy Florida? Because he's still seen at the Ocheesee Pond. And again, we kind of got that classic. It's very shimmery, which I know is common for, modern Bigfoot, modern Sasquatch to have that. But Florida skunk apes generally aren't associated with that shimmery effect.
Right.
And the green flash that appears before him, which is starting to become a bit more common with other Bigfoot stories too. But then the thing about this one is he glows. He kind of has this crazy glow to him as he wanders through the swamp. And then he'll fade out of existence. So as witnesses have seen him. Now, he's got a bit more of a human face, but he's still covered in the crazy hair, and he has kind of a gaunt walk to him, according to eyewitnesses. So, now is there a ghost of a Bigfoot here in Florida? It seems so.
Talk about a little a double threat there, and I think that Kari really captured that in her illustration. The gait of the creature, or the kind of creature-ish human being, if we're going that route, but the face does look a little humanish, which I've said many times I think would really screw me up if I saw the more human-looking Bigfoot. And now, I did not choose this, but just as a little teaser for everybody, the very next story, which we're not going to talk about, so there you go pre-order Creepy Florida. The very next one, and this is very close to the Wild Man of Ocheesy Pond, is it's the 2-egg stump jumper. Now, guys, if there isn't a better name for a creature than that, bring it to me. Let's hear about it. We all want to hear about it. Oh, it's amazing. And I was wrestling with between that one and the Wild Man story, the ghost, but then when the ghost thing came up, I'm like, oh well, I got it, because he's competing with the skeleton, with the glowing skeletons. I was like,
I said, we had to find the odd stuff. We found the odd ducks.
You sure as heck did, and that's why it's still it reminds me so much of you guys' other books, and I appreciated that.
Appreciate it. Yeah, no, the 2-egg stump jumper, definitely something that I think he deserves his own, he deserves his own book. I mean,
he does. He's
got a crazy little story there. So, we just tease him a little bit in this one.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's why I wanted to at least mention the name, because it's one of the damn best names I've ever heard for anything in my life.
Florida loves to name things. We've talked about this since day one. It's like, we got a sea monster that lives in a lake, it tips over boats.
Yeah.
Because he's the color boiled shrimp, what do we call him? Not the lake monster. The lake monster. No, we call him Pinky.
Pinky, man, because it's Florida. You got to keep things in line with Florida. And the 2-egg stump jumper and the Wild Man of Ocheesy Pond, by God, if those things don't go with Florida, I don't know what does.
Exactly.
It's perfect. All right, guys. Next is Bellamy Bridge. This is, holy cow. I love this story. Love what's going on around this area.
This area is huge for Florida paranormal, because you've got, it's near Mariana. You've got all of the ghosts of Mariana, Florida, which, is a huge Civil War battle. It's got, the Russ House. It's got all these amazing places. But just a little ways off is the Bellamy Bridge. Now, this ghost story is so famous that it is actually on, when you go to the Bellamy Bridge State Park, I think it's the Heritage Trail now, Bellamy Bridge Heritage Trail. You go there, there is the sign, tells the ghost story. How many state parks tell a ghost story, on their signs?
Right.
Now, this area, thankfully, we just were there quite recently. It got damaged pretty badly by Irma. Hurricane Michael came through and wiped out a lot of this area. So, and it's just now being restored. So the Heritage Trail right now is closed, but it should be reopening by the end of summer. You don't want to be out there right now anyway, just because the mosquitoes will eat you alive.
Mm-hmm.
They are our state bird, after all. But
they really are. They should be.
Yeah, they should be. They should be more than the mockingbird. Every state's got
that's silly.
Have a mockingbird as a state bird?
If you think of Florida, you think of skeeters. I mean, that's it. Exactly. Just the mosquitoes that absolutely should be the state bird. They're damn big enough and ferocious enough, like a little raptor or something. So they should be.
The bridge story goes that a young lady named Elizabeth Bellamy had just been married. And somehow her dress caught on fire, and she fled the wedding screaming and ran to the nearby Chipola River. She died, in agony over a couple days, and her young husband killed himself right after there, and her ghost is seen walking along the banks of the river. Sometimes her gown is made of fire, all that. That's the story on the bridge. That's the story everybody knows. As we did the research, we found out not so much. That's not the truth. That's kind of what happens when you start looking into the history of these. The young lady named Elizabeth Elizabeth Croom did marry Samuel Bellamy in North Carolina. Not only did she survive the wedding, they moved to Florida, and they had a young son. And now yellow fever did hit her, and she did die shortly thereafter. And then her son, a week later, was buried beside her. And then her husband, he lived for quite a little while later, and he was still buried in the same area. Now, the story of the fiery dress and the young bride comes from a novel by Caroline Lee Hentz, who was a native of Mariana. And she wrote in this book about a slave bride who was married in a big house on the Bellamy plantation. And since a lot of her books were said to be based on true events, many began to associate her book with the Bellamy Bridge story. So that's where we think the ghost story comes from. It's from this book turned into the legend. Now, there is a ghostly figure seen there, and it is a bride. Now, she's not usually on fire, but she is seen there, this white, lady in white, classic lady in white ghost. That's why we assume people think she thinks she's a bride. But it is just a lady in white apparition, which is quite common. And so the story fits. So of course it has to be exaggerated to make it into the ghost story. Now there's another ghost story of that bridge. Now that bridge has been used long before. And the bridge that's there now was actually built in 1914, long after Elizabeth Bellamy. And this one was there's a headless horseman in the area, and he's seen wearing a Spanish garb, which the early Spanish explorers were going through that area, and so he's supposedly seen riding like he's been shot at, possibly, who knows, there's a lot of crazy stories, but I thought that was a much better story than the Bellamy Bridge, the one of the ghostly bride, but he doesn't get nearly as much love.
I mean, once you say the two words headless horseman, I'm in.
Exactly.
Like, I can't not bring this up. This is amazing. Yes. Yeah.
That's why we were like, yes, this is why we have to bring light to the other ghosts there. And sad to debunk Elizabeth a little bit. But now, not saying that it's not her looking for her lost son out there.
Right.
But not on fire. And then, heck, watch for a headless horseman, too. That's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Stuff is there. Sometimes we just don't attribute the right reasons to it.
Right. Yeah, there are lots of witnesses, and lots of paranormal investigators go out there like crazy. Now, one of the fun things are, they show all these pictures of orbs on the site, and we're being eaten alive by mosquitoes, and I'm itching right now just thinking about the troubles we had out there.
Yeah.
It was a lovely place, but you couldn't stand still.
Yeah. So we were like, okay, so maybe some of these orbs might have a natural explanation.
Yeah, just maybe.
So so just bring lots of repellent, and then you'll be fine. Yes. So.
See, but I like the fact that you guys are more than okay with saying, hey, we heard the original story, we dug into it, and here's actually, maybe even to debunk this one, but you bring up even a kind of a cooler side to things that actually would make for a better ghost story. Or, I mean, it's very sad in a lot of cases, a mother looking for her son or something like that. And no, she didn't have a dress made of fire, but if people are still seeing her, there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, and what if it's some other figure in white? Just because that's what we want it to be to fit the narrative doesn't always mean that's what it is. And we learn that more than anything in this book is like, the narrative doesn't always fit. I mean, we want it to fit, especially me as a writer. I want the story to fit. I want all those I do love it when the pieces do click. It's like Molly McCoy's story fit so well into the, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And, but then some of these, it's like, whoa, wait a minute, this doesn't fit. And then you find out, oh, look, here's a novel that's got the same plot, written by a lady who lived there. And it's like, oh.
I just kind of migrated over.
Yeah, but it turns out really well that way, too. And, as Metallica has said, nothing else matters. And when you say the two words headless horseman, That's all you need. There you
go. Exactly.
Nothing else matters. Yeah. Yeah, bridges. I mean,
Florida. Florida
and those freaking bridges. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just as a little side note, and we have covered Dozier School before. Horrifying place. If you could just, and I don't even know, and I didn't look it up because I wanted to ask you guys, quote unquote, as close to in person as I can get to you right now. Yeah. But just glance over what Dozier School is if no one is familiar with that horrific place. What, how many are interred there? What has gone on there? And if there is, in fact, any updates for some of the survivors, those boys that were going to, go to court and have some legal action against Dozier School for Boys.
Well, the Dozier School, also known as the Florida Industrial School for Boys, was basically 111 years open, and was supposed to be the home for the worst of the worst offenders, of juvenile offenders in Florida. They were opened in, I want to say 1911, and or 1901, and it was supposed to house 100 of the worst, the kids who were, who killed other kids, the kids who raped other kids. It was, that was all it was supposed to be. And what happened was, within a few years, they had over 500 students, and then it just got worse, and immediately charges of abuse, students doing crimes to other students. And then suddenly it starts spreading a little bit. Rumors start spreading to the staff. It starts being investigated as early as 1920s for these abuse allegations, but it never shuts down. It just keeps going, and the abuse allegations grow, and kids just start disappearing there, and kids start dying there, and it's hidden. It's like they just hid it from the rest of the world. They didn't want anybody to know about it. And then what happened was, in 2011, that's how long this took, it finally closed down. And that's when the stories really started coming to light. Because what happened was, there was a Boot Hill graveyard. And the Boot Hill graveyard had 31 graves on it. Now, according to all this time, there were 24 recorded deaths at Dozier. But 31 graves. Now, of those 24 deaths, 6 were faculty who died in a fire trying to save the boys. So why is this odd? So Professor Kimmerly from USF opens an investigation. She starts looking into it. And she gets ground radar out there. Now, the state has closed the property. They're trying to sell it. They want to sell this and just burn it to the ground, forget it even existed. But she gets out there with her equipment, starts doing investigations, and she finds 55 bodies in those 30-some-odd graves. Only 24 recorded deaths. So that starts and opens up the wounds, and people start digging in. And now there's an organization called the White House Boys, and these are the boys who survived. And they tell tales, and if you go to whitehouseboys.org, you can read some of their stuff, and it's traumatic. It's horrifying, some of the stuff these boys survived through. And but this has been going on for years now. Now, the state finally issued an apology, and back in 2017, this was right about the time we were writing Erie. And then Irma and Michael came through back-to-back years and damaged Mariana pretty bad. This was just last year when Michael came through. Some trees were uprooted in the area, and they had forced Professor Kimmerly and her group to stop their investigations. They weren't allowed to go looking for the second Boot Hill that the boys told them about. There's all these stories about this place.
There's a lot of restrictions.
A lot of restrictions on what they could do and what they couldn't. So the findings were kind of inconclusive and all that. But anyway, with these trees uprooted, the contractor was coming in to clean them up, noticed a lot of unusual, regular indentations in the ground from the rain. Another graveyard, the other Boot Hill that they knew existed, that they were hiding. And so Professor Kimmerly is now back up there again, and she is digging in again with another archaeological investigation that is supposed to begin any day now.
Oh, God.
And so we will have more on that as that develops. yeah, and the town of Mariana, which is nearby, where so many people who worked at Dozier lived, is still trying to. They don't know how to come to grips with this either.
Right.
It was in their backyard. People, the boys accused them of bad things and hiding it, and and the town itself is like, we didn't know anything about it. It's a gray area, and it's definitely not something that's easy to get information on when you get up there, because some people just don't want to talk about it.
Right.
And and you don't know which side of the fence everybody's on, and if you start looking into it, you can upset people, and in both camps. That's especially when you're going there looking for ghosts. Of course, it's horrific. Of course, there's ghost stories from the place, because how could there not be? I mean, this place was terrible. So main Dozier grounds are still closed to the public, but across the street is the Dozier Church, which has been abandoned, and it is wide open. And that was the sad thing; it was literally wide open. We walked in there, and there were records from the school from 2005 to 2011 with
God.
kids' names, social security numbers, and other stuff just in files. They just threw them in there for storage.
Oh my God.
So, we didn't go in. We just, we're looking through the windows and all that. I mean, it is still, but we were able to report that. And hopefully, when we last left, there were reports that they were destroying those finally. But somebody could have walked in there and gotten any of that too.
Oh
but
my God.
It's a train wreck.
It never
Literally
ends over there. It never ends. So is there any rumor or estimation about how many more bodies may be interred on that second boot hill?
The estimate, according to records, is 0. But they're convinced that there's quite a number more.
Oh God.
And then, like I said, we had the one story we put in Erie, Florida, about the boy who they found they finally got a family member, because that's the problem. Most of these kids were, kids that had no family. They were sent there for everything from truancy to incorrigibleness. That's my favorite. There was a kid who was sent there for incorrigibleness.
Shame on him, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there go room with this child molester and this child murderer. And you're incorrigible. But there was a boy who was sent. His remains were sent up north, and Kimberly found the family member, a distant nephew. So they were finally able to get permission to dig up this boy. Now the records at Dozier just said missing, presumed escape.
Oh God.
But yet they sent a coffin to this family and said he was hit by a train while escaping.
Oh my good God.
And when they dig through the coffin, they finally dig it up with Kimberly's help. They found it was full of wood. So the family had a funeral for wood.
Oh, you know what? It's so disgusting that, and that story, Dozier, I was not aware of until I talked to you guys for your first book. I was not aware of Dozier School, and then it just gets more and more horrifying as time goes on. And you said that any day now, there could be more breaking news about this place. Yep.
They're preparing as we speak for the new expedition, and we will keep everybody posted at Erie, Florida, as best we can. But if you just thewhitehouseBoys.org, that's the real charity that could use your help for any of the boys that survive, and they also keep up on it too. So if you want firsthand accounts, that's the place to go.
Jeez. Well, thank you guys for the update. I was wondering about that. I wanted to make sure to ask you about Dozier School, because that's been something that we've talked about every time I think we've hopped on. So
yeah, every place we go, every time we go to an appearance, somebody comes up to us who was a survivor, who has a story to tell. They're just happy that we don't. They even told us ghost stories that were there when they were there.
Yeah,
of previous boys, but they also want to tell us the real horror too, which is it's very cathartic for them and tough for some of them.
Yeah,
it's just it's amazing.
Well, in keeping with this very heavy vein, this next story that I chose to talk about has to do with Ted Bundy himself.
Yeah,
and this was from Tallahassee.
Yeah, this is Tallahassee. It's our Florida capital. There's plenty of stories in the town. There's a famous witch's grave that we kind of slightly debunk a little bit, but there's enough odd stuff there anyway. But of course, everyone knows, especially now if you've watched Netflix at all, there's how many Ted Bundy documentaries and docudramas and all that are there now?
Yeah.
But it all boils down really to the worst location, which was the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. And this is where Margaret Bauman and Lisa Levy were bludgeoned to death by Ted Bundy. It's mind-boggling how horrible it all is. And the fact that he would have gotten away with it. I mean, he'd already been arrested. He'd already been in jail. And he escaped. And he disappeared. And, here he was in Florida. And the only reason he got caught was because he had an expired tag on his car from the stolen car he had. So he only got, he got caught again. Now, the house, of course, is going to have stories after that. Such a horrific incident. But we found what was amazing about the ghost stories here was it was not the violent events replaying or, which is so common with these, stories of a location like that. The ghosts here seem to be almost guardian angel protective of the other people living there. People will walk down and the lights will suddenly come on, and even though it's not motion detector lights. One lady was locked in her room and she couldn't get out. She couldn't figure out why she couldn't get out. She was panicking and, called 911. She thought somebody was holding her hostage in her room. And when the police showed up, they actually caught her ex-boyfriend, who had become a stalker type character, was actually sneaking into the building to try to find her. But he had never gotten to her room. Somebody was keeping her from getting out and possibly being harmed, and or something. And they actually caught him climbing out of a window trying to get away when he saw the cops. So the spirits here tend to be more protective, and we thought that was enough interesting of a twist to it's like, okay, yes, something horrible has happened, but something is decided to make it right.
Yeah, there's a different side to it. Yeah, once I saw the name Ted Bundy, I'm like, go guys, you're including serial killers now in the book, tied in with other, as you said, a very positive side to this same location, which had horrible things go on. I can't think of a worse way to go for some people than to catch the attention of some of the sicker folks that we may run into on maybe once in our lives and not know it, right?
And then here it ties back into Freaky Florida, our second book, with the Devil's Tree, because it was about this time Ted, once he gets caught, he starts pen paling with Gerard John Schaefer from the Devil's Tree.
Yeah. And
that's when they start comparing notes, which is what inspires Hannibal many years later.
Yes.
The stories. So it all ties together, and that's the scary thing. I think that even scares me a little bit sometimes when I find those little connections, the synchronicities, as one of our friends calls.
I have Hannibal on my DVR, and I'm a little ashamed to admit, because I do love to read books so much. During the day, I'll read for the show, like you guys' book or whatever, because I want to be very focused in writing notes and highlighting. But at night, that's when I kind of read for myself. It's not for the show. And I'm ashamed to admit that I've never read, Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon, Hannibal. And even though I love those movies because I'm a huge, huge fan of Anthony Hopkins, I think he's maybe one of the top 2 people on my list that I would probably faint if I ever got to meet them. But long story short, I need to get those darn books. And actually read them. Have you guys read those?
It's in your pile.
Yeah, okay, our 2 read pile is about to fall over and kill me.
I hear you.
To read these before you die. Oh, they're killed by them.
Yeah.
When they fell. No, they're excellent books. I kind of, I like the dark stuff. I can't imagine where I get that from.
Right?
Those were great. There's the, I know a lot of people, expect me to love the Dexter novels, and they're nice.
Right.
I like them a lot, But if you want fun Florida serial killer books, Tim Dorsey writes an amazing series called the Surge Storm series. Now, these are basically Dexter meets Tarantino, and Surge is a serial killer who kills other serial killers, and they are wacky, crazy, only in Florida adventures. And Tim is a super awesome writer, and I hate to say he and I are going head to head in the Best of the Bay contest right now. For best novel in the last, best book in the last 12 months. Our Freaky Florida is up, so
no way.
FRAY fans, go vote. Go vote. Look up Best of the Bay and Best Local Book.
Hold on, I gotta write that down. Best of the Bay?
Yeah, Best of the Bay.
We've got it linked.
Like,
on.
I think we've got a link on Facebook. So, but it's a we're up for best book the last 12 months.
Okay, so is it
Erie came in runner up to a book about dogs. So I felt I was happy that we got as many votes as we did, considering they had every animal shelter in town pulling for the dog book.
Right. Still not right though. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
our good friend Al Going Back just won up in Orlando for his new horror novel. So we're kind of hoping that we might see a horror tide, swarm over Florida here if we can win it here too. So
I mean, it is Florida. It should include some horror in there and have somebody win it up that creek. So is it best?
And I'm cool if Tim gets it too, because like I said, it's the Surge Storm series is a hoot. The character's name is Surge.
But
he is a
you kind of want to win, though. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it would be nice to get the win. But definitely if you want a fun read, read some of his. Triggerfish Tale is probably my favorite of that series, and they're pretty fun.
Okay, so where would Into the Fray listeners go to vote? bestofthebay.com? Is that the website to go to?
Yeah, I think it's I don't know if it's bestofthebay.com. It might be. It might. I think it's Creative Loafing is the magazine.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's Creative Loafing's Best of the Bay. So it might be CL Best of the Bay. I'll have to look it up.
I will try to link that.
We'll put the link somewhere on this.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'll put that in the show notes too, so at least my listeners can go help vote for you guys. I mean, after all, you are my most oft visited guest for Into the Fray, so I'm sure that some of my listeners could help to pitch in for that. So now, anytime I can butcher the word wolf, I'm going to do it. And in this next story, Velda Mound Park, there are some wolves that we need to talk about.
Yes. Now, Velda Mound Park, also in Tallahassee, it's a dog park now. It is a mound. It's a shell midden. No sign of burials there. Shell middens are Florida mounds. They basically, the Indians, the Native Americans in this area would eat all the seafood, and they would throw all their shells and everything into a big pile. Then they'd cover it with dirt, and then they'd start the next pile. They cover it with dirt, and they start the next pile, and eventually it becomes a giant mound. And it actually, that's anytime you see the food, the sea, the ground level rise anywhere in Florida over 20 or 30 feet, it probably was a shell midden at some point. And in this area, they have often sightings of fires, just some other, like bonfires and things like that. And so when the police come out, there's no sign that there's ever a fire. There's no sign that there's any sort of anything happened there. So, the ghost story is that it's possible that it's the Native American, camp that was near that area that people are seeing. It's a housing complex now. And one of the ladies that we talked to was walking her rescue puppy, which my daughter loves whenever I can throw in a puppy into the stories. And the sun hadn't come up yet, but she saw this glow behind one of the nearby trees. Now, she'd heard the stories of the ghostly fires, so she thought that was what she might be witnessing or something like that, or just maybe something, more mundane. She said her first thought was it was a biker or something, but then the glow grew brighter, and she saw a giant, large, white wolf come out from behind a tree. Now, it looked like it had walked out of the tree because there was no butt end, on the other side of the tree. It looked like it just was coming out of the tree. And it was huge. And she said that it walked right up to the mound and then reared back to howl. And just as the sun comes up, it just disappears. No sound. But she, saw it. And she says she still sees that every night in her dreams. is that wolf that she sees.
I could see where that would stick with you if you saw
Yeah,
that. Sound or not.
It goes away. And now we have since we first started looking into this story for the book, we did start reaching out to people who lived in that housing project. And it's called Arbor Hill neighborhood up there. And any of your listeners from Arbor Hill want to contribute, we'd love to hear more stories, because now we've gotten a few witnesses, not just of the fires, but of the wolf. And so some sort of Native American spirit, possibly, some animal guide, doesn't seem to do anything but walk out and howl at the morning sun. So it's definitely an early dawn. It does seem to disappear just as the light comes. So
it's very, very poetic, and woof woof. I mean, what?
Yeah.
All right, guys. So I thought for the first edition that I would end with one of my favorite subjects of all time, which I don't really cover that much, but once I read it in your book, I was like, well, I'm not going to not cover this. So it is, in fact, pirates. I love pirates. And so specifically, we are talking about Amelia Island, and then Blackbeard himself appears in this story. So I love this.
Now, Amelia Island is one of our favorite places. I think we've been there more times than... I think it's on par with St. Augustine for the most visits for us. It is right on the Georgia border. So for those of you keeping track at home, we haven't even gone south at all yet. We are just going right across the top of the state. Mm-hmm. And now we're out into the Atlantic Ocean. And Amelia Island, the home of Fernandina Beach, which some of you may recall was the home of the grave of Wikidemus from our previous book, has amazing place. A lot of history. For a long time, it was owned by pirates. It was several years. It was taken over by Gregor MacGregor, which I don't know if you can get a more Scottish name than a mercenary man named Gregor MacGregor.
His parents wanted to make sure you knew where he came from.
Exactly. He was married to a cousin of Simon Bolivar. He's a mercenary in the early 1800s, and he sails to Amelia Island with a force, and he's going to seize the land from the Spanish. And now, basically, this guy was a con artist. He swindled his way up through South America and built a small army and said, we're going to, I rule this country called Poya in South America and, near Venezuela. I'm the king of this country. And it's a fictitious country. The dude made it up. But he got all these men to follow him because he's like, we're going to parlay that power and we're going to gain control of even more. So he goes up to Amelia Island with about 80 guys, and the Spanish freak out when they see him sailing in because they're like, oh my gosh, it's pirates, run. They didn't realize he only had like 80 dudes in his boats. So they just surrendered, didn't even fire a shot. So he takes the town, very Pirates of the Caribbean here, and he's got it. And he names it the Free Florida Republic. And he's holding it, but he realized, he's got to pay his men now. The town really wasn't rich. So he decides to print his own money called Amelia dollars, I think. Because he's prohibited the people from looting. And so the morale is sinking like crazy. People are freaking out. His men are, getting really restless. So he leaves. He goes back to Europe. Gregor MacGregor just sails away. He said that he's like, I've got to go. That was my Scottish accent there for a second.
Very MacGregor of you.
Yeah, Gregor MacGregor flees.
Gregor.
But his best friend, a guy named Louis Aury, who is a French sailor, has sailed to the land, and he's going to be the head of this new island, and it's now going to join the Republic of Mexico. And he's going to be the head of the Florida Republic. And they actually are calling it the Florida Republic Navy. And Louis Aury arrives. And he was also a privateer and a pirate. And he had sacked a couple towns out in Texas and Mexico. And had run into Jean Lafitte a few times. and they had had some run-ins, and they kept stealing each other's towns over in Texas. So sure enough, he's like, I need to get away from this Texas area, and my good friend Gregor McGregor has an island on the other side of Florida. I'm going to go over there. I'm going to take this cushy job. But when he gets in there, he's about 2 weeks too late. Gregor McGregor has already fled. Ari sails in and realizes there's this vacuum. So he steps up and he claims it for the Republic of Mexico and starts ruling the island in 1817. And barely holds it for about 3 months. And December, they surrendered the island to U.S. troops who were going to hold it in trust for Spain, which they did hold for about 5 years, but then Florida was ceded to the United States in 1821. Now, Ari stayed during this whole period. He was supposedly assisting the transition, but he was actually helping the smugglers and pirates continue to do their stuff while the soldiers were holding the land. He held power for a long while, but then he too decides to leave while the getting is good because he's starting to see everything's kind of going away. Now at this point, they're estimating that there's 400 ships in the port of Amelia Island, and about 90% of them are flying pirate flags. So Ari is realizing the money's gone. He's not able to hold the fort as much as he used to. The power has shifted to these other guys. So he bails. But he leaves his son behind. And now his son is not as notorious as his father. He's not as powerful as his father. But he is still a pretty bad guy. Another pirate, another privateer. And he decides to just stick around. He's loving life. He's hanging out in this one bordello and enjoying life. And then he realizes the town is coming for him. And they're going to make him pay for the sins of the father, basically. And he doesn't escape in time. He gets arrested. And he gets thrown in the old jail. And he's decides, I'm not going to let them have the satisfaction of stringing me up. So he slits his own throat. But somebody catches him mid-job. Didn't quite have the security guards of Epstein. And so they get out there. Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
It's perfect. It's really, really perfect. Yeah.
So the doctor gets in there and saves him and stitches up his neck. Says, yeah, you ain't getting away from the rope that easy. So they stitch him up. Now, what the best part about this story is they take him out to be hung with his slit throat. It's barely stitched together, and they tie his shirt up high to hide the stitching. And he doesn't have any last words because he can't talk. He's almost dead anyway. And they go to hang him for the public, and pop goes the weasel. It's already stretched and already cut. So yes, blood goes everywhere. It's a beautiful story. Now, the tie-in here is during this period, as every pirate in the world is coming into this town, there is the White House brothel, which is where Ari liked to hang out. The pirates tended to hang out there a lot. And there was also a cemetery. Now, this is one of Florida's, if not oldest cemetery. They do think it might be the oldest cemetery in Florida. Now, there's still some debate. But it's called Bosque Bello. And it is beautiful. It's got a lot of mossy trees. Kari loves it. So there's supposedly a grave out there that is the grave of Mama Martina, a voodoo queen of the area who had ties to the White House brothel and a bar called Wicked Davies, which is still there. Now, in there, supposedly one of Blackbeard's sailors, while he was there during the Ari reign, he's on the island, he's with a lady, he's having a good time at the White House brothel, and one of the ladies there says, you could be the new captain. You could take out Blackbeard. You'd be more famous than Blackbeard. If you go to this Madame Martina, she will give you the power to defeat him. So she goes, and this lieutenant goes, and she says, oh yeah, I can summon. He's like, protect me from Blackbeard's sword. And she's like, oh, yeah, for some gold and some offerings, no problem. Make you invulnerable to iron. Make you invulnerable to the sword. So he's convinced now that he can't be killed by Blackbeard. So he's going to go challenge to be the new captain. And he apparently goes right back onto the ship, issues the challenge, and Blackbeard stabs him. Doesn't kill him. The guy's like, and so he draws his own sword. Blackbeard, without missing a beat, pulls his pistol and shoots him in the head. And apparently he forgot to ask to be protected from bullets and lead.
Darn it. Mama Martina, I mean, all you had to do was ask her and she would have protected you from that shot in the head.
Come up with something for that too.
Dang it.
You know how those deals go. You don't ask, you don't get.
That's right.
Now, so of course, Blackbeard finds out about this and that there's this, the lady involved. He finds out about Voodoo Queen. So he sends his men knowing that she's hidden somewhere near Boscobello. So I'm just picturing this beautiful, serene location with all these wonderful graves and just pirates marching out into this swampy, cypress tree covered, cemetery with little copse of trees with just a few stones and just looking for this Voodoo Queen. And after a while, he's like, the men are just getting lost because the cemetery just twists and turns. And of course, I'm sure there's some voodoo magic out there happening where he can't get through. So they leave. And of course, Mama Martina becomes the one who beat Blackbeard and got away. So she becomes even more famous. And now people go out there looking for her. And it's not like Marie Laveau or some of the other voodoo queens we've researched where they have a marked grave that everybody goes and leaves offerings. Nobody knows which one in Boscobello is hers or even if she's there. But people go there looking for her because that's where Blackbeard went. You got pirates. And now, of course, the illustration in that one, we've got wonderful Luke Ori, who was hung, and he's very much nearly headless Nick from the Harry Potter movies now. He's seen all throughout the jail. He's seen all throughout the old jail. He's seen a couple other places nearby, near the hanging tree right outside of the old jail, which is still there. He's seen with his head dangling sideways as he wanders the halls. And that's actually the Historical Society of Amelia Island there. And they have ghost tours because that ghost is seen so often there.
Really? Just for Luke?
Yep. Let alone all the other crazy pirate and other history. Amelia Island is a bevy of history there. So
when I read that part where there was 400 ships and nearly all of them were pirate and flying the Jolly Roger flag, I was like, this is incredible.
Yeah, everybody thinks, Barbados and San Juan and all that. Amelia Island, Florida.
Can you imagine, though, what everybody smelled like back then?
Oh, my gosh. It's just crazy. the plus side is it's, it's a sea breeze, so, kind of be blown away a lot, but
I guess you just have to make sure to stand shoulder to shoulder so no one is upwind of you.
Yeah, and definitely while you're there, you have to visit the Palace Saloon, which is one of the oldest continuously operating drinking establishments in Florida. And it's we were there just recently, and we were talking to the owner again because old Charlie, or Uncle Charlie, is the ghost there. And he died in a room he rented upstairs of that bar. But Charlie had invented this amazing game. If you go to there, there's the bar has a couple ladies carved behind the bar that are, how shall we put it? Have some wonderful décolletage.
Ample bosoms.
Yes.
Ample bosoms. Thank you, Carrie. But anyway, he invented a game where you could bounce a quarter on the bar and bounce it into their cleavage. You get your drink for free.
That's only fair.
Yep, and he would make a fortune every night sweeping up the quarter because that's a long haul. Even as nice as the girls are, that's a tough bounce. He was basically a carnival game he invented. But I guess Charlie likes to clean up there, and so anytime anybody loses loose change in that bar, it tends to get swept up, and you'll hear it. And the owner was just telling us just the other day when we were up there talking that he was cleaning up one night and he heard all this change being swept.
Oh, that's cool.
And he's like, so Charlie's still around. So, have a nice little drink and say hi to the pirates.
Oh, Charlie. Uncle Charlie.
Yep.
He knew how to make a couple extra bucks every night, right?
Yep, and apparently still doing it. So,
well,
even though he's been dead for a little while.
Next up for my readings is, of course, the beautiful St. Augustine there in Florida. I have that all clipped, ready to go, ready for my notes, my highlighter. So, of course, edition 2 for Creepy Florida will not be long in the future for us. Once again, please bring up where to find you guys and where to pre-order Creepy Florida and when people can expect their pre-order to become available.
Okay, EerieFlorida.com is our home, although we are transitioning soon. We are becoming Erie Travels.
Because
we're finally breaking out the state a little bit.
Right.
Although Florida's still home, so I think we're gonna have Erie, Florida tied to that no matter what.
Right.
So it'll still be, you'll always be able to find us there because that's home. No, that's you. But we've got let's see. So you go there, but the books come out September 30th. This is for Creepy Florida. Now Eerie and Freaky both been bestsellers, so we're kind of hoping this one hits right up there too. If you you can order it at any bookstore. We love it if you order it at your mom and pop's because it's available everywhere. And but Amazon, of course, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. We've done signings at Costco's now. Mm-hmm. And you can find us in odd places. The nice thing about History Plus Press is we're all over the place. We have people who love showing us the weird places they found our books. They found them in Harbor Freight. We've been found in Cracker Barrel. That
Ace Hardware.
Ace Hardware occasionally.
I mean,
so
Cracker Barrel is nice because then afterwards you can have an incredible meal at Cracker Barrel.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we love. My parents must be very proud of me from beyond because my books are in Cracker Barrel, and that was like their cultural icon.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, you can find us anywhere. Now we will do a local signing somewhere here in Tampa Bay area around launch time. We're discussing with a couple bookstores. Hopefully Books at Park Place is open by then because we love that store. That's where we started, and
if not,
there'll be a local one. Yep. We're doing a bunch of events starting in late September. There's a ghost train that drives from I want to say Titusville all the way across the state. It's up near Orlando area where they do their main thing, and they do a bit in Ocala. And this train travels and they tell ghost stories all along this old train. That's cool. They Phantasmagoria, which is a performance troupe. They do kind of burlesque, kind of gothic, kind of old classic Victorian theater stuff. They are actually adapting some of our Erie, Florida stories for the first time this year. So we will be there for the inaugural launch of that in September 22nd, I believe. And so we'll be signing at that event as well. And then we'll be at Spooky Empire at the end of October, right, for Halloween night. Is coming to Tampa this year from Orlando. Man, they've announced a heck of a guest list. Clive Barker, Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi, Ted Raimi, James Hong from Big Drum Little China. That's who I'm excited about. Elvira's returning because of the fiasco last year.
Yes.
So she's trying to make up for it, which is wonderful. And Joe Bob Briggs, and just about any horror icon. And Alice Cooper. Just about any horror or heavy metal icon you can think of is going to be at this convention in Tampa, and we're going to be there signing as well. So we're excited.
And what about places, social media-wise, people can find you, like Facebook, YouTube, things like that?
Yeah, at Erie, Florida, on pretty much most of the channels. If you Google up Erie, Florida, we're everywhere. We're
on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram.
Yeah, you can find Kari's stuff at Fox Dream Art as well. That's her stuff that's not eerie and creepy, although it is kind of cute. And then you can always find the amazing Claudius, our wonderful Savannah monitor. He hides around too. So
I love seeing that stuff about Claudius.
Yeah, Claudius is awesome.
Yeah,
and he's magical too. He escaped for 3 or 4 weeks and then reappeared.
That's very scary. And I was watching that because you just don't know. You don't know if they went somewhere and they're just. I mean, I hate to say it, but they went to pass away somewhere as animals do, or it's a frightening thing. So I'm glad that Claudius came back.
Yeah, we were so happy. It was just there's his tail, and then and now we've added Missy to the family, who is our little ball python.
Yes.
So, and if you follow Kari's feeds, you can watch all the stuff about the animals. I'm working too much, so I don't get to spend as much time with them as I should. But they keep Kari company for me.
Yes.
We each have our types of zoos that we have to take care of at home. So a big high five for that, fellow animal lovers. So.
Yes.
Well, you guys, I will be talking to you very soon. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that, I just said this last week because I had John Olson on. I'm like, I hope you guys never stop writing books because as long as you're writing them, I'm going to have you on. And like I said, we've got 2 more editions to do for Creepy Florida. And edition 2 will come up very quickly. So I appreciate you guys so much.
Oh, anytime. We love talking to you. We love listening to the show, and the fans into the fray. You guys are always great on the message boards, and some of our best interactions have been with some people who've heard us on there for the first time and all that. So always an honor, always a privilege, and we love you dearly.
Yes.
Love you guys too. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good night and stay cool out there in the desert.
Yes.
Yeah, I will try. I mean, I can't really complain because after all, it's not Florida and I don't have mosquitoes the size of birds. So, I really should just be quiet.
Well, we will end with my old greeting that I used to sell everybody as they would go through our haunted house here in St. Pete back in the day. And it is very appropriate for Creepy Florida. See you on the other side.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. Zen master Dozier put it in this way. He said, spring does not become summer. First there is summer, and then there is spring. When you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in the chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.